The tools you will need for this repair are a 1/4 inch, 3/16 inch, and 5/32 inch T-handle Allen wrench, a 1/16 inch, 5/64 inch, and 5/32 inch Allen wrench, an M6 and M2.5 Allen wrench, an M3 Allen driver, a 5/16 nut driver, a T15 Torx wrench, an optional 3/16 inch Allen driver, and a rubber dead blow mallet. Begin by removing the green belt assembly. Instructions on how to perform this can be found in the wizard article, Replacing the Alignment section, which is either above this video if you're watching it on the iJetColor wizard, or by clicking on the link in the description. Once the alignment section is gone, remove the main motor by loosening the 4 3/16 inch Allen screws holding it onto the belt bracket. Remove 2 screws and keep the other 2 loose, then lift the motor enough to remove the transmission belt. Next, remove the cable from the bottom of the motor by opening the clasp and pulling it off. Now, remove the other 2 screws to finish removing the motor. Remove the end roller bar by removing the 2 5/32 inch Allen screws which hold it to the table. Next, loosen the coupler from the vacuum piping using a 5/16 inch nut driver and move it out of the way. Remove the 2 monitors by loosening the thumb screw at the top of the mount in the back, then lifting the monitor out of position and setting it aside. Take note of which cables go where, then feed those cables back through the tabletop. Next, we will remove the monitor arms and keyboard. This can be accomplished by loosening the M6 screw at the back of each arm and then lifting it off of the assembly. Undo the set screws on the monitor pole using the M3 Allen driver, then unscrew and remove the pole. Next, we will remove the printhead mounting arms. This is done using a 1/4 inch T-handle Allen wrench. Each arm is fastened underneath the table by 2 1/4 inch Allen screws at each post. The operator exit side arm may be difficult to remove without first removing the vacuum tubes. Remove the 2 arms from the table. Make sure to note which arm was on the left and which was on the right, as their positions affect the alignment of the printhead. Remove the gray vacuum tubes by tapping them with the mallet until they come off. Now, we will remove the print platen using a 1/16 inch Allen wrench. Then, we will remove the drip tray, which can be pushed out from underneath. We will now unfasten the tabletop from the chassis. There are 7 screws which hold it down. 4 on the operator side, and 3 on the non-operator side. Once the screws are removed, recruit an extra pair of hands and flip the table over, as shown on screen. Rest it on the frame. From here, we will fully loosen the belt tensioners using the 3/16" Allen wrench. There is one tensioner at each corner. Only loosen the tensioners enough so that the bearing block bottoms out, and no further. Now, we will loosen the encoder attached at the middle of the operator side. This can be accomplished by loosening the collar that separates the encoder from the frame, using a 7/64" Allen wrench. Now, we will unscrew the tensioning assemblies from the tabletop, using a 5/32" Allen wrench. As the table is now upside down, these are accessed from underneath. There will be 2 screws holding each of the end plates down, and 4 screws holding each middle plate down. Once this is done, remove the end tensioners. Take note of the left-hand side tensioner. It has a couple of thrust bearings, which aren't present on the right, so we will want to make sure to keep track of that. Next, we will remove the last screw holding the encoder onto the center tensioner, followed by the other 3 holding the 2 long black bars onto the assembly. Note that the screw that holds the encoder on is longer than the other 3. Now, lift the central tensioner out of its slot on the tabletop and carefully remove the faceplate from the operator side. The best method for executing this task is to wiggle the plate back and forth so that it slowly moves up the shaft. The 2 smaller shafts attached to the plate will fall out first, and you should remove them before continuing. The tolerances on these parts are tight, so removing them will be made easier by keeping them as straight as possible whilst removing. Finish removing the faceplate from the large shaft by wiggling it the rest of the way off. There may be some difficulty in the final removal. If need be, you can push on one side of the plate, while lightly tapping the other side with the mallet, as seen on screen. With a little doing, the plate will come off. Remove and set aside the thin shafts. Remove the rest of the center assembly and set it aside. Then push the bulged portion of the belt back down the center and gently remove the belt from the tabletop. Now, we will reattach the blue belt. Take a look at the seam on the belt as you put it on. The zigzag pattern of the seam should end facing towards the right on the operator side, as seen on screen. Gently thread the belt onto the tabletop with one hand while holding the tabletop up with the other. Reattach the center assembly by bulging the belt up through the center of the tabletop. Then, thread the big shaft through the belt loop you just created. Make sure that only the central shaft goes through the loop, and the 2 black bars do not. Grab the shaft from the other side of the belt, as seen on screen, and pull it through until the faceplate settles into the slot. Grab the other faceplate and begin threading it onto the shaft. If necessary, you may lightly tap the faceplate onto the shaft by tapping one side with a mallet and applying steady pressure on the other side with your hand. Eventually, the shaft should slip onto the bearing. Move the non-operator side faceplate out of its slot. Then go over to the operator side and begin to reinsert the thin shafts by passing them alongside the bulge in the belt and up through the cutout in the center of the tabletop. From here, thread them into the non-operator side bearings. Once that is done, move the non-operator side faceplate back into its slot. Slide the operator side faceplate in a bit and line up the two small shafts with the bearings. Get one shaft aligned and then the other, and when they're both on the shaft, wiggle the faceplate until it drops into the slot. If necessary, light tapping with a mallet can be applied after all three shafts are started. Following that, roughly center the belt on the shafts. Make sure that on the left side, the two thrust bearings are on either side of the belt. Now, we will reinstall the encoder on the operator side of the central shaft, along with the other screws which hold the central assembly together, using a 5/32" Allen wrench. The longer screw should go through a small attachment coming off of the encoder. Finally, retighten the collar that holds the encoder onto the shaft using a 7/64" Allen wrench. Make sure that the collar doesn't touch the faceplate. Reattach the central tensioner to the tabletop by reattaching the 8 countersunk screws to the faceplates from underneath, using a 5/32" Allen wrench. Don't tighten all the way until all of them are started. Now, reattach the right tensioner assembly. Recall that the right assembly does not have the two thrust bearings. Thread it through the belt and drop it into the slot. Then, reattach the left tensioner assembly and make sure that the thrust bearings are placed on either side of the belt. Now, we will reinsert the screws that hold the left and right tensioners to the table. A good technique to line up the screws is to pull one side of the tensioner towards the end of the tabletop until the holes line up. Then start the screw. Repeat the process on the other side of the tensioner. Do this for both tensioners. From here, we will tension the blue belt. Alternate tightening the tensioner screws so that there is never a large difference in tension between them at a given time. Place a 5/16" Allen key at the top of the slot that the tensioner moves around in. Then, tighten the tensioner until it just squeezes on the Allen key. Back it off a little bit, and then move on to the other one. Once all 4 tensioning assemblies meet the 5/16" criterion, move the belt by hand and ensure that it does not walk to one side or the other. If the belt does want to walk to one side, loosen up the opposing side's tensioners. The belt will want to walk towards regions of lower tension. Once the tensioning process is complete, flip the tabletop back over. Reattach the two arms to the tabletop by reattaching the two screws to the bottom of each post from underneath, using the 1/4-inch Allen wrench. Now, we will reattach the tabletop to the frame. Push the tabletop around to fit the holes so that the screws go in easily. Do not fully tighten any of the screws until all 7 are started. Now, reattach the print platen. Note that the ink reservoir beneath the platen needs to slot into the little pocket between the plates of the tabletop. Once that is lined up, reinsert the screw using a 1/16-inch Allen wrench. Reattach the monitor mounting pole, including the 2 set screws at the base, followed by all of the associated fixtures. Then, reattach the monitors. Thread the cables up through the tabletop from within the machine and attach them to the appropriate monitors. Now, we will reattach the main drive motor. Attach the motor to the bracket from before by reinserting one of the screws using the 5/32 Allen wrench, then doing the same on the other side, and then attaching the rest. Loop the belt around the pulleys and then pull the motor down as far as it will go, taking care to make sure that the screws are level with each other. Then, tighten them down. Reattach the cable to the motor by inserting it into the slot and closing the clasp. Now, we will reattach the vacuum tubes. Start by removing the control panel by taking off the 5 screws which hold it on, using a T15 Torx wrench. Once it is off, set it down on the tabletop. Then, once it is out of the way, align the vacuum tubes and gently hammer them in place. Then, reattach the tube coupler using a 5/16-inch nut driver and reattach the control panel. Now reattach the exit rollers to the tabletop. And finally, fasten the 2 Phillips head screws to the exit plate to complete the replacement of the blue belt. From here, you will need to reattach the alignment section, which can be done using the video which is either included above this video in the iJetColor wizard or by clicking the link in the description. The pertinent section begins at 2 minutes and 56 seconds.